Really love today's guest and the subject matter we're going to cover. It's going to be impactful. Dr. J, you know from personal experience that our guest has a message that he's got to tell.
Oh yeah, for sure. Very powerful leader in the marketplace, and just a person I know for a fact loves the Lord, and there's wisdom in all these different things that he teach, and very powerful nuggets. I call them my treasure chest of gold and jewels, that the little nuggets that he drops along the way. So I'm very excited to see what he shall speak and deposit today. And I'm always excited for these corral calls. I see you have your I am one T-shirt on. So
Yeah, so I am one real quick for those that don't know and might be seeing this. It's all about the 1 million disciple. That's what we're here to do at Sheep Feast is see people empowered. We want to facilitate and amplify what God is doing through others. And in that, we'll see many folks discipled. And of course, our guest, Gary Fry. Am I saying that right? I almost forgot. Am I saying
Yeah,
Fry? Okay. I
yeah,
thought it was Fry all along.
yeah. It's
You
Fry. It
know,
looks like Frey, but it sounds like Fry. You
yeah,
did a
exactly.
good.
Because I'll have Fry with that. And but Gary is an author. He's a speaker. He's a business leader. He's making disciples in his own way by just teaching all the things that God has allowed him to experience. And the authorship comes through a book that's called "Silence the Imposter," but it's like seven keys, right? Tell us the exact
Seven weapons.
seven
Yeah,
weapons.
we're not being pacifists on this one. These are seven active weapons.
Excellent. I love
To
it. I love it.
silence it.
Yeah, so we'll get a little bit into that because as we were doing a little bit of pre-show talk, it is kind of a core to a lot of what we all deal with is this idea of like people don't really know who I am and
Yeah,
they're gonna if they find out it's gonna be bad. So
yeah.
Gary, before we jump totally into that, give us a little bit of background, who you are, or where you come from, well, just to get to so that people get to know you a bit.
All right, cool. Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I reside in Charlotte, North Carolina, and it is hot. It is as hot as Atlanta right now, man. It's been over 100 degrees, and so my cold plunge, when I get into it, it is extremely shocking with the temperature differential, but then it feels extremely good after you get past being shocked. But yeah, so Charlotte, North Carolina is home, and but I was born and raised in Kansas in the middle of nowhere. And partner embezzlement brought me here in 1994 the first time. So we've had some trials and tribulations in life, but guess what? That is part of life, I think. I'm just so grateful to be here. We fell in love with this place, even though it was very difficult when we first got here. I joined a company, was given a large percentage of the company, not the majority, but a good percentage of it. Brought a $2 million account. The guy knew I forgave hundreds of thousands of dollars from my first partner that I caught embezzling. After I turned his company around, that's what I got a few years later. And the choice at that point was, do I expose this guy and destroy him, or do I take the firm that I built from ground zero again because he was basically bankrupt when I was brought in to do the turnaround at the ripe old age of 28, um, and destroy my name? Well, a good name is to be valued above great riches. I mean, that was just like hitting me hard. at at that time I was 30 years old, or 30, almost 32, when discovered this. Um, And so that was my dilemma. And I'm like, I'm not going to destroy him, and I'm not going to destroy my name. So I gotta leave Wichita, Kansas, like that, in a firm that had my name on it, that of people that I loved and clients that I loved. And that was a difficult thing, but came out here and brought my big $2 million account and my top guy designer with me. And within the first 6 months, my partner said, right after we'd signed, sealed, and delivered the $2 million account and the whole year's worth of media buy and everything, he says, "Today's your last day. I got what I needed." He owed me 30 grand. and knew I forgave hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he knew that we were on fumes financially, had two little kids, 4 and 7 at the time. My wife was home with the children. So Charlotte, North Carolina wasn't necessarily utopic, when I got here. It was a hard place, but God meets us in hard places, I think, right? And He teaches us some of the most profound lessons, which are really painful, but there's a real sweetness in the middle of that. And so I guess, that's a little bit about me. My two boys are grown. They're 38 and or will be, yeah, let me think about that. Yeah, he's 38 and 36, soon to be 36. And then I've got four grandchildren with my oldest son, Josiah, and love them
Josiah.
dearly. It's a blessing. And next month, my wife and I celebrate 42 years of marriage, which is really pretty cool.
Excellent. I don't think I knew your son was Josiah, or at least my son is Josiah. So there you go.
Ah, Keith Green resurrected that wonderful king of Judah's name.
I didn't even know because funny enough, like that was a name. We were one of those weird people that kind of had all of our names way before we had any kids. And
Yeah.
so we knew a boy was going to be Josiah. And at that time, no, we didn't know anyone that ever had named their kid Josiah. Now it's definitely like you would have been on the early as well because
We
with your sons
were,
in your third
yeah.
or late 30s, I because we just didn't run into them. But yeah, we were believing that, right? The righteous kings are going to be rising back up. So
That was the funny thing because my best friend from college, we were in each other's weddings and we got married 2 weeks apart so that we could be in each other's weddings. And our wives were talking that first year when we were together. He was still going to school. I had dropped out of college at Kansas State. And our wives were talking about, hey, if we are blessed to have children and if we get to have a boy, both of them said, yeah, we're convinced our firstborn is going to be named Josiah, which is really funny. And then I'm like, well, and Jennifer's like, well, is that okay? Like, heck yeah. And then she's got 49 cousins, and there are two Josiahs besides our Josiah in her side. But Keith Green wrote a song called Josiah's Song, and I used to listen to Keith Green a lot in the late 70s and early 80s. And and I had dreams about this boy named Josiah, and we didn't know until the moment he was born whether we had a boy or a girl, but I would have probably died from a heart attack because I had all these dreams about this kid named Josiah. So,
awesome. Love it.
yeah,
Very cool. So back to the we'll touch on this imposter syndrome that we mentioned earlier. So many people seem to have to deal with it on some level. I know you've worked with a lot of different folks
yeah,
and it crops up, right? No matter what
yeah,
your title might
yeah.
be.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I didn't even know what that term was until probably 4 or 5 years ago. But I know for a fact after I did learn more about it, I'm like, oh, I suffered that from the time I was probably 10 years old. Oh, well, what is it? It's not a physical or a mental condition. So if anybody's wondering, it's not, but it's a phenomenon, and it's, why they call it syndrome, I don't know. But two female psychologists, and here's the irony, in 1972, when I was 10 years old, they coined that term, imposter syndrome. And they coined that term after observing a bunch of their high achieving female clientele that were plagued by these thoughts of, I'm not good enough, I'm in over my head, I don't know what I'm doing. If people just knew this or that about me, they would reject me. I got to keep certain things hidden. Know what I'm saying? Perfectionism. I suffered from perfectionism for sure. And that whole wondering, am I good enough? I never felt good enough. Do I fit? I was the oldest kid, and it wasn't that my parents were driving me. They were not. They were trying to throttle me back all the time. But I don't know why I had this relentless need to be perfect. Well, that's a pretty tough um, assignment, and it's a crushing one. And you know, well, but Scripture says, "Be ye perfect, for I'm perfect." Ah, man, I weaponized that one on my wife, a couple times coming home with kids' toys, strewn and whatever. Like, what's going on here? It looks like a bomb went off. Like that's not a great way to make it to 42 years of marriage. By God's grace and her patience with me. And the stallion still needed a lot of breaking. But it will break you, and it did. And but these and the best visual description I've ever heard of this thing called imposter syndrome is imagine a 1 inch circle, and in that 1 inch circle it says what I know. Now that 1 inch circle is surrounded by a 5 foot circle, and this 5 foot circle says what I think everyone else knows. Hmm. What I think everyone else knows versus what I know. Oh, massive discrepancy. And I don't know why we assume everybody else has it together when we don't. But man, I know this social media has made it way worse because we see everybody else's show reels, carefully curated, professionally shot or whatever, or like, wow, weren't they just at St. John's Island last week? Like, wow, look at those pictures and wow, incredible. The filet mignon and blah, 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 right? And then we compare that with our current reality or our reality and what I call our behind the scenes reels. And there's a massive discrepancy. All of the stuff that our outtakes, the stuff that we hope never makes it to the light of day, things that are, embarrass us or shame us. And we compare that with somebody else like they got it together. Must be nice. It's a false, it's like going to Las Vegas, facades. It's like a Broadway play. They're sets. It's not reality.
Mm.
And so, and it wasn't until a woman that I was coaching at the time had 10,000 employees, 10,000 W-2 employees. And she's been on our podcast called the Anything But Typical podcast. And I don't remember if it was in a coaching session or maybe it's when we were recording her, before we were recording her. But she says, Gary, I don't know what I'm doing. And I just want to laugh, like, what? She goes, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm like, Tana, I think that's imposter syndrome. But first, before I said that, I said, why would you say that? She said, I only have a 2 year secretarial degree. Oh, that comparison thing again. Well, a CEO is supposed to look like this. Says who? Says who? She's hobnobbing with the Women's Presidents Organization, the WPO crowd. And what was really amazing is she said that but she had written this book a long time before that. And this book is called Celebrating a World of Difference, which is really a great book. It's a very fast read, but it's about her story. Well, and her story has some outtakes that you just don't want to be talking about. And she certainly didn't want to talk about them in the WPO crowd. Things like, oh, hey, I had a child out of wedlock at age 15. Well, you don't want to talk about that anywhere, but especially in Virginia in the South. And she's about my age. And then she ends up having that baby. Good job, Tana. She ends up marrying the guy, thinks that's the right thing to do, finds out he's abusive, beats her up so badly after she has the baby that she's in the hospital and she is abandoned by this guy and the baby. And then she wants to go back to high school. She doesn't want to get her GED. She wants to go back. So she humbles herself, goes back, baby in tow 2 years later from her graduating class, and she's with a whole new class. Finishes, because she was a freshman when she had this happen, right? She goes back, gets her high school diploma. But as a single mom, she can't afford college like she'd always dreamed of. So she goes and gets a 2 year secretarial degree. Well, those are not the credentials of a CEO that has 10,000 employees. So she had to hide them. And I said, man, Tana, what was that like when you put that thing in this book? What was that like? And she said it was terrifying. But she said, you know what happened is I got free and I found out a whole bunch of other people got free. Hmm. Hmm. Well, that's why I wear this courage t-shirt anytime I talk about imposter syndrome, because that is weapon number three. Shine a light on it. Shine a light on the stuff and expose the stuff that you've worked really hard to hide. That is masochistic almost, right? But it is like confess your sins to one to another. Now, I'm not saying go out and air all your dirty laundry, but I'm saying if you've got an albatross around your neck that you feel shame every time that it comes up or whatever, that you're working really hard to hide it, expose it.
Mm.
Tremendous courage, but man, I'm telling you, it will set you free. And my story was far less dramatic, but I was a college dropout. My dad was just shy of his PhD, just hadn't written his dissertation, and my mom was an RN. She had gotten her college degree, and I'm the oldest kid. I'm on a full ride scholarship at Kansas State University, and I get a job offer for 10,500 a year, no benefits after my sophomore year of internship when I was working three jobs. But that internship, and my advisor said, Gary, you got to take this job. I can't get grads placed. It was 1982, and it was the highest unemployment since the Great Depression. I can't get grads placed. I said, well, what happens to my scholarship? She goes, it goes away. Whew, that was a tough one. But I knew that it was the right thing. And then I fell in love with this woman that has been my wife for 42 years. She was 19 and I was 21 when we got married. What does a 19 and 21-year-old know when they're getting married? Nothing. But we knew this. We were committed to Jesus. We were committed to him. And thank God, we did not know, but we were committed to him. And I think that, that poor woman has been through hell and back with my crazy career trajectory. I mean, and the embezzlement is like child's play compared to some of the stuff we've been through. I mean, it's like child's play. No kidding. Um, but what we've seen is God's faithful. But when Tana Green said, Gary, I don't know what I'm doing, I thought, wait a minute, there's a pattern here. Pretty much every CEO that I've coached or that has confided in me or that I've walked alongside or that I've worked for, when they dropped their guard, said the same thing. Don't know what I'm doing, because they were comparing everybody else. This is what a CEO does. But so I got to be like that. I got to force myself into that mold. And man, that is a trap. And that's when I was like, I gotta write this. And so I just the back half of the book is really about my journey, which is one of the strangest ones you'll read. But I really didn't want to write it. I didn't want it to be about me. So I'm like, well, if nothing else, my kids will know all this stuff. But then, so I put it down for a few months, and then it came on. Like I understood very clearly, like, no, these are the seven things that I learned in these really deep crucible times that were very simple, which I'm from Kansas. I like to keep it simple. Simple, but powerful. So like one of them is like the first weapon is really super simple. Realize you're not alone. What? We throw ourselves into an isolation chamber in our own minds many times where we think nobody knows and we don't talk about it because nobody can relate. They don't want to relate. I'm the biggest village idiot to have succumbed to that or whatever. And then we get in this isolation chamber, and man, I think the enemy has his way with us. And then it's like, see, you don't know what you're talking about. Nobody knows, blah, blah, blah. You got to hide these things. No, you don't. just talk to somebody. Like it was so much shame around my partner embezzlement because I'm like, he was like a father figure to me, you know, 20 years older than me. Everybody in Wichita, Kansas knew him. And he was a good guy. He just made a series of stupid, compromising choices. And we can justify almost anything, but it's usually in small increments. And I realized that the most terrifying thing about it was I could do the same thing. We can justify anything over amount of time. Like our minds are very can be very deceptive. And that was what was terrifying to me. It wasn't the betrayal was of trust was deep. It that was tougher than the money. And it was a lot of money because I didn't come from money, but and it was really all we had. But the betrayal of trust was even more. Well, you learn from these things, right? So anyway, that journey is very strange, but we've all had strange things. We've all been dealt with unjustly, and we've all made stupid mistakes that, we had to pay the consequences. Like we're all guilty of all of those things. But what do you do about it? And so these are the things, and one of the most profound things, like I won't talk about all the seven weapons, but there's one, and it's weapon number four, and it's focused more on serving than how you're perceived. Mm, 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 mm. As a guy that was always comparing, I was very always concerned about how other people perceived me. And I can see, like, I remember being an MC for a big event with a bunch of very wealthy people in the room, and I could see people grabbing their phones. I could see people like nodding off or whatever. And it just made me even like, whoa. And when I was president of a company called bizjournals.com, we took it from three people to a $100 million company in a pretty short period of time, even after the dot-com bubble burst. It was just an amazing thing. But we did 360 feedback um, all the time whenever I had to speak. And we had 41 business journals at the time across the country. And my boss, who had been COO of Dow Jones, Wall Street Journal, like he was big on Gallup and he was big on all this kind of stuff. And so we get these things, and my chairman, and I would see what other people read or said about me. Oh, that's embarrassing. And one of the comment cards said this: Gary's great one-on-one, but in front of large groups, not so much. Mm. Ah, like in front of my chairman. Seriously, I think they were right, but it was because I was so worried about perception. Like I was going into hostile territory at that time when I was speaking all these places because we were perceived as a threat to their existence. Anything.com had a value and anything real did not have a value. Toys R Us, which, and pets.com with the sock puppet, they had these crazy valuations, but things that had reality brick and mortar had zero value or very little in that day. And so they were very threatened by this. So I knew I was walking into a hostile territory all the time, and I had to find out a win-win solution for all of us. So I was probably hypersensitive to some of that, but that really haunted me that was in 2001. And now all of a sudden I'm doing this in 2007, and I'm getting ready to do another big event with our partner group. I was in a private equity group and very well-heeled people, 300 families. And I was writing in my prayer journal the night before I had to fly out and do a week-long deal. So it's 3 days with them and then 2 days of management meetings. And my CEO was very critical. Every word I ever said was parsed and reevaluated and examined. And I'm writing in my prayer journal, Lord, what am I doing? I'm like haunted by that 360 feedback from bizjournals.com. And I'm bemoaning. I'm like, Lord, I feel like Moses, like give me somebody else. I can't speak. I'm slow of speech, get tongue-tied, right? And I was just, lamenting in my prayer journal, like, what am I doing? Who am I? What? I don't even belong in this kind of group of people. And then here I am. I'm supposed to speak for 3 days and blah, blah. And this is what I felt like very clearly came across my mind. Was it the voice of the Lord? I don't know. I did not hear an audible voice, but this thought was very, very clear. A servant is not to be concerned about how they are perceived. A servant is to be concerned about serving. Go serve them. That was it. And it was incredible because when I got up to that podium and I'm looking out and I'm thinking again, and I could see if anybody's like checking their phone or whatever, and like, no, you serve them. It does not matter what they think of you, Gary. It doesn't matter. If you fall down and your pants fall down and you slobbering all over the place, it does not matter. You serve them. And what was really cool, that last night of the event, um, a woman who had been over, she was a top exec from McDonald's Corporation. She had retired early. And she pulls me aside. I'm going through the dessert line or whatever. And she pulls me aside and she says, Gary, I know what it takes to pull off these kind of events. We did them I was in charge of those at McDonald's as well. And with thousands of people and not just hundreds. And she said, nobody has done it any better than what I've seen you guys do it here. And she said, and the other thing is you are so good in front of people. I was just like, I wanted to fall down and start laughing. Like, oh Lord, you're so good. But it wasn't about me. It was about just serve these people, get our eyes off ourselves. So those are some of the real powerful ones, for me. And I would just encourage anybody listening or watching this either live or, on a delay. That's one of the most powerful things. The other thing, like another one that feeds into this is gratitude. Be intentional. A gratitude journal, man. I've got my gratitude journal, but I do 3 entries in it every day. I'm grateful for dot, 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 followed by a thought or a prayer. That's it.
Love it. So that for everybody that's going to be listening in or seeing this later, go check out this book, right? You can find it on Amazon, right, Gary?
Yeah.
People
Yeah.
go
It's called Silence the Imposter.
Silence the Imposter. Some really powerful tools there, weapons, as we've been talking about.
Yeah.
Tell us about this statement, I believe, in part of your journey through, some of the difficult times. Essentially, I remember you saying, "Deliver me, but even if you don't deliver me, I surrender." Is
Oh,
that about right?
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Can you give us a little insight on that?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely the darkest time of my life. This private equity firm that I grew to really love, even though I really felt like an imposter, like I, I don't have the kind of wealth that these people have. Comparison. Um, I really loved them, but the thing blew up. 30 million bucks worth of us got wiped out overnight. And I lost everything except for my house. And the board ousted our CEO, who I thought was one of my close friends. He was very difficult. I mean, he was very critical, but I still considered him a close friend. Sociopath. Didn't even know what one was. And then we had invested in 2 Ponzi's on top of things. On top of that, I had money in it. I had 14 people in it. And one of them was a $2.2 billion Ponzi that used HIPAA laws to prevent any forensic accounting. So it was just brilliantly devious. And the other one was a $500 million natural gas mineral rights play. I mean, and this all happened within 1 week. And so I started having night terrors because I had to shut down 11 offices, 90 people gone. The board, one of the board members in particular, there are four board of managers that one kept me alive because it was going to take 300 grand to go bankrupt. Yeah, it cost money to go bankrupt, and we didn't have that. But he kept me alive, and I had two kids in college. I'm like, hey guys, nothing is guaranteed. Like you're gonna have to figure it out. I'm gonna have to figure it out. And but I was having these night terrors. I'd wake up at 2 in the morning typically, and they would happen about 3 times to 4 times a week, where I felt like somebody was choking me. That's a spiritual thing. I knew it. My heart rate, I'd click it, and it'd be 140 beats a minute, and my resting heart rate at that time was 39. So it's like full workout. And I was like, Lord. And so I started fasting. I'm praying, and I've got scripture cards about fear. Perfect love casts out fear. And I'm just memorizing these things. But I'm like, Lord, why do I feel like a Raggedy Ann doll in the mouth of a Rottweiler with my stuff and being spewed all over the room? Like, why do I feel so powerless against this fear? And I didn't have an answer to that. And because my prayer was, Lord, I know you can deliver me. Will you deliver me? Please deliver me. Repeat a million times, millions, millions of times a day. Boom. That was just all that was just firing in my brain. And so I called two friends of mine in different parts of the country. At the time, I was living in Cleveland, Ohio, or Chagrin Falls, aptly named, and is an outside, whatever, outside of Cleveland, but it was a suburb. But one was in Charlotte and one was in Boise, Idaho, and both of them have been through fire, and they've both been faithful to Jesus. And I said, man, why am I so powerless against this fear? Like, I believe God's word to be true, but man, it's like, seems like, not even a squirt gun, in a firefight. And both of them, they don't even know each other, said the same thing. Gary, it's about surrender. Can you trust him even if he doesn't deliver you? Can you trust him if your worst fears come upon you? Well, those worst fears were real. I mean, we had the SEC going through all of our emails. I was so afraid of the sin of omission, not the sin of commission. I was terrified of that because guess what? With your securities license, you're guilty of either one. And I was just terrified. And I'd befriended a guy that spent 7 years in a supermax. Like I lived in Chagrin Falls, there's 3,000 people, and everybody kind of knew each other. And there was a guy that I befriended behind the counter of the Einstein Bagels, 30 paces from our office in downtown or in the little village of Chagrin Falls. And he had been a multi-millionaire, kind of a hot shot, long hair, hippie guy that everybody wanted to be like him. And he got thrown into the slammer because he was falsifying day trading. He got behind, and some big hitter guys were putting money with him, and he was brilliant. He was brilliant. He was a savant. But he got behind and he's like, I'll make it back. I'll make it back. I'll make it back. And he didn't. And they threw the book at him. He was never supposed to be in a supermax, but he was in a supermax for 7 years. Lost everything. His wife disowned him and divorced him. His only son disowned him. Came out, I think, with like 17 bucks, something like that. And he's got an ankle monitor working at the Einstein Bagel. And I've become friends with this guy and I start hearing his stories. Well, that'll throw fuel on the fire. If you think you're already afraid, here's somebody that actually killed a man in self-defense in a supermax. Yeah, that'll do it. And I was like, oh man, but this whole thing it's about surrender. Can you trust him even if your worst fears come upon you and he doesn't deliver you? Ooh, that took me down to bedrock. I had 2 days of just wrestling with that, just heavy wrestling. And then I came back and the way that I got out of it was, all right, God, have you proven yourself throughout history? Well, there's really, you have to have a lot of faith or naivete to discredit God's faithfulness throughout history. And I'm not talking about just taking the Bible for its word, but look at the historical record. There's a book by Gary Habermas called the something about the case for the resurrection, and it's like the foremost authority on the historical evidence of the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus. It's like it'll blow your mind. So I'm like, all right, you have proven yourself throughout history. And then I had to go to my own personal walk. If somebody put a gun to my head with a round in the chamber and it's cocked and ready to roll, and they say, I'm putting this bullet through your brain unless you recant your faith. What are you going to do? I was like, did I have any moments in my life where I would have to say, you pulled the trigger? And without a doubt, I can't not deny certain things that there is no explanation for from a human reasoning standpoint, but I didn't want my experience to drive it. I wanted historical evidence first, and then my own personal. I'm like, yep, you're going to have to do it. And so then it was like, all right, Lord, I don't like this. I'm terrified every day. And I mean, literally multiple times a week, it's like, okay, who's suing us now? I mean, even the CEO tried suing me and the owner of the Indians, who was one of our board of managers, 3 times for two different things. He had to get different lawyers because they didn't make any sense. But you still got to defend yourself with no money. Like, how do you do that? One of those board of managers. But I'm like, okay, it's terrifying. But what was really interesting is I started sleeping like a baby and it got worse. So that was it. Things all hell broke loose in June of 2009. By August, I'm going crazy. One guy pulls me aside in chagrin that had worked with us, and he goes, "Man, you don't look good. You look like you're gonna die." And I said, "I feel like dying." I didn't want to commit suicide. I wasn't going to, but I was genuinely depressed when I woke up. I'm like, here we go again. Groundhog Day all over again. But this thing on this gratitude journal, I had to learn intentional gratitude. I'm not denying the reality of this existence of what's going on. These are real threats. I cannot put my head in the sand and hope that they go away or drink my way into oblivion. I refuse to do that. I can acknowledge it, but I don't have to focus on it. I was like, I got to find one thing like every day. And then I would do like a Facebook thing. It's a great day to, and I'd find a scripture and like every day, it's a great day to what? Give thanks to the Lord, for he is good. Oh, okay. Reminder for myself and anybody else that cares to watch or listen. And I amassed about 470 some of those because I mean, it's every day. Like people were in federal pens that I was on the phone with that were the CFO for one of these companies. Like a lot of those guys got locked up. And so it went on actually for years, but it got intense and it intensified. The climax hit kind of by the end of December of 2009, and then things kind of subsided a little bit. But it still came down to, what can I be grateful for? It's surrender and be grateful. Powerful, powerful. Man, I wish I didn't have to learn them the way I did. But if it helps somebody else.
Yeah, I mean that's we've been having this conversation, Jay and I, about what if all the things that we're doing right now never really we don't see the big dream that we have because you look
Yeah,
at Hebrews 11, right? And all
right.
these Hebrews of the faith, and they kept
Yeah,
believing even though they didn't see the promise. And that's kind of what you're talking about, right? Is that,
big
even if
time.
you don't bring me all the way through, I'm still fully in for what you're doing.
Well, that's the whole thing. I mean, the Stockdale paradox, if you guys are familiar with that, but Stockdale was a prisoner of war in the Vietnam War. Horrific circumstances. And the Stockdale paradox is when he saw all these guys dying around him because they were putting a date on when they would be delivered. Oh, I hope by Christmas. Christmas comes and goes, and they die of a broken heart. They lose hope. And it's so easy for us to put hope in a date. Oh, Lord. I mean, um, I did 13 winters in Chagrin Falls, Ohio. It's a beautiful place about 4 months out of the year, 4 or 5. And one of my best friends lives there, right? And I'm on his board. So I go up there a couple times a year for board meetings. I love him and I love that place about 4 or 5 months out of the year. But I missed Charlotte, North Carolina every day. And many times I'm like, Lord, and I'd call prayer partners, one of my prayer buddies down in Charlotte. I'm like, am I being like the children of Israel longing for leeks and onions by the Nile, here in the desert? Or like, I don't understand it. Like, anytime we'd pass through Charlotte and whenever we're heading back to Ohio, I would tear up. Why? This is not heaven on earth. Charlotte, North Carolina is a great place, but it's got plenty of problems too. At least it has trees and hills, which we did not have in Kansas. But nonetheless, like it's not heaven on earth. Why? And Mark Iacono is this guy's name. Mark said, Gary, I don't know why, but it seems like God's just hardwired Charlotte into your GPS. I think so, but I felt tormented for 13 years. But I was like, Lord, and there were a couple times I tried. My boss at Bank of America, best boss I've ever had, she wanted me to come back in 2010. So we'd been through devastation in '09. I'm like, oh Lord, please get us back. I blew the interview. I was very honest, but I blew the interview. I thought she was punking me. Like I was looking at houses and like, all right, we're going back. 5 years later, after I blew the interview, and she's like, no, they misunderstood what you said because they asked why did I leave, and it was like I should have just said I got an opportunity to go run a .com, left it at that. But I didn't because I saw them promote people that didn't have my skill set into these roles, and I'm like, my skill set I don't think is valued, and so I said that and they took it as like the person that was in that role that I didn't like them. Like that wasn't it at all. But God has a way. I mean, like Joseph, and this is not the same thing. Now, Joseph did spend 13 years in an Egyptian prison, and I spent 13 winters in Cleveland. But that's probably the only similarity between me and Joseph. But what was interesting, but the delay. God had a call on Joseph's life. And it seemed like whenever, if he talked about it, it just got him into trouble. But he passed the integrity test. First of all, he passed the betrayal test of his brothers. Then the integrity test. Hey, Potiphar's wife is making advances. And, he was 17 years old, probably, is what they anticipate. His hormones are blowing through his ears at that point. Probably a beautiful woman because Potiphar was one of the top people in Egypt. So he probably didn't marry, a schlep. Nope. And because he's like, I cannot sin against God. Wasn't that he was not tempted? I'm sure he was tempted, but he was not going to sin against God. Oh, what's that do? Oh, that gets you into the perseverance test of 13 years in an Egyptian prison. Hey, remember me, cupbearer? You know, forget. But all those were preparation for the most dangerous test, as Oz Hillman in his book called The Upside of Adversity, one of my favorite books, says the most dangerous test of all was the success test. and he was tried. But all he wanted, he wasn't seeking to be number two guy in the land. He just wanted to get a ticket back to Canaan and see his dad. That's all he really wanted. But he ended up saving two nations, Egypt and Israel. But those other tests prepared him. So, like, if you're going through tests, man, Lord, what am I supposed to learn? And sometimes we don't know. Sometimes that answer is not immediate.
Yeah. Oh man, this has been amazing. It's I've heard this story before, but there's just so much wisdom that you carry, Gary. I didn't mean to rhyme, but I just did, and we're gonna go with
I like it.
it. But there's a lot of other great resources and stuff that people can take advantage of. Of course, follow Gary on his socials. You get to see him freeze himself out on a regular while he drops some wisdom and some gratefulness. So check out his socials, his website, Gary D. So there's the letter D in there, Gary D. Frey,
Yeah.
FREY.com. Actually, we'll share that real quick here, just so people can get a look at it. And yeah, let's do that. So look at this handsome guy up here with his purple shirt on. Uh, you got a podcast. You mentioned it before, anything but typical. You've been doing that for quite a while, right?
Yeah, 5.5 years, actually, a little over. But yeah, that's been so much fun.
Yeah. And then for those that might run across this, that are looking for speakers to really get people in the right mindset, you do that as well, right, Gary?
Yeah, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. And if you check the about page, there are some other things. This strengths versus weaknesses or strengths slash weaknesses isn't enough was really kind of give us like a
Oh
little
man.
preview of that if you could.
Yeah, so this is the most bonehead simple T chart that you'll ever do, but man, like we run it for every team that I coach. We've run it through our entire company, and whenever we're hiring people, we get really serious about this. It's this T chart. And on the left side, that column is thrive. On the right side, wither. It's not strengths, weaknesses, because a lot of times people's strengths are actually in their wither column because they're burned out on it or they became proficient and but why, And so what we try to do is like pay attention to the stuff that makes you come alive. Like what, and be really honest. Don't make it like, well, that's what this job description says, so I should be good at it. Like, no, what we like to do is custom tailor as much as possible within a role, like what makes you come alive. So this is back to the uniqueness, the anything but typical. Like God put a unique code in you, discover what it is that makes you come alive. And so I do that like when I speak to Vistage groups, they're typically like a 3.5 hour kind of session they want. And so we'll do a workshop just on Thrive Wither and 30 minutes of just like stream of consciousness, turn off all the, noise and just focus on the what makes me come alive first. And then what's the stuff that's draining your tank? Like you're good at it, or maybe you're not, but you just hate doing it. And it just like I dread it every time I have to do it, or it just saps me. Get really honest about those things and then try to figure out, all right, how can I spend more time in my thrive zones? Do I need to leave? Do I need to re-engineer my job? Do I need to go my boss? Or, like if you are the boss, like, hey, what do I need to delegate of this wither column? Remove those things and do the stuff that I love to do. A guy that I was coaching and his management team, when he came to me, he had just turned down $3.5 million for his company. Call it our high school dropout. I mean, barely finished high school, got fired from the Hardys, but he was brilliant in many things. And he had about 125 employees at the time. And so we did this, and then we did kind of a function accountability chart. And so when we did the function accountability chart, I'm like, hey, write out all the main functions in the firm. Like, all right, head of sales, marketing, HR, accounts payable, accounts receivable, operations, training, blah 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 blah. Right. So they had, I think, 14 things. And I said, all right, I want to know where's the buck stop? Like who's ultimately responsible for these things? Who have you empowered? His name was by 11 of the 14. I'm like, oh, no wonder you hate life, you know. So circle any of the things that you actually like to do and you love to do. He circled three. He loved training his folks in the field. So he had an erosion control company and he liked working with unskilled laborers. Well, what CEO likes doing that? He does. Two was he's a mad inventor. He loves inventing stuff. He like do that. Okay, cool. Most CEOs don't do that. They may have an R&D people or, you know, whatever, but he likes doing it. And then the final thing, he liked working with big clients, like big track home builders, like the Lennars of the world or whatever. I'm like, all right, we need to strip these other things off and we need to put those, because guess what? We'll find somebody that those are in their thrive column. And we did. And within a couple months, and he was going through hard times. His wife was having medical issues, and they had adopted a special needs child that had a lot of issues. So life wasn't easy. But he goes, Gary, I can't wait to go to work. Like, I'm just so excited. But he was dragging his butt to work before then because he hated it.
Mm.
And he hated hating it. You know, it's like, so that's a powerful one.
Love it. Well, Gary, I know that you have other things to do today. I mean, we'd love to just hang out with Gary all day, hear his stories and his encouragements. It's been wonderful.
Thank
Like
you.
we said earlier, folks, go check out his website, follow him on social, and buy that book. You can find it on Amazon. And
Thank
uh,
you.
yeah, it's been a great time to spend with you. And any final words just as we kind of part ways for today?
First of all, thank you guys for having me on it, and thank you for what you're trying to do. It you know, God calls us into great things, and many times we wonder, you know, you look at all the prophets, it's like, man, those were some tough roads to hoe, you know, like, man, oh man, oh man. But we weren't made to walk this thing alone. So I'm one, but we're not to be walking alone. And the fact that you guys are doing this thing together, um, Jesus sent out the disciples two by two for a reason. And so I really believe that. And iron does sharpen iron, and we are better together than in solo acts. You know, one man bands are interesting freak shows, but they're not, you know, they're not a well-tuned orchestra that you want to sit and listen to for a long time. So, anyway, thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for having me on. Hopefully, it blessed even just one person. If that is the case, it was well worth the time.
Definitely. Well, you blessed me. I'm pretty sure it blessed Dr. J.
Oh yeah. Thank you for your time. Tremendous blessing.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, thank you guys. Bless
All
you.
right. Thanks, everybody. We will catch you next time on the next episode of the Corral Call. Until then, be blessed, everybody.
Give them heaven. See ya.
Yeah.